quality, high-definition TV on every screen, where and when they want to watch. TV that offers secure subscriber access without logins or plugins. TV that seamlessly blends content with only the most relevant ads, buffer-free. With Adobe Primetime, the industry's first flexible modular solution, broadcasters and MSOs can deliver TV, film, and ad content experience to any device. Understand audience behavior and trends across devices using one data toolset. Create engaging, personalized viewing experiences that balance content and advertising. And simplified digital broadcast and distribution workflows. Adobe Primetime. Making every screen a TV.
Good morning, everyone. I am here this morning on behalf of Adobe to help us understand what's going on in the marketplace. I guarantee you, or at least I hope, my aspiration for this presentation is that it is the best sponsor presentation that you've ever seen, because that's the last time you're going to get a commercial. It's really all about you. Now, I was thinking about it on the plane on the way in, and I thought, how cool is it that you work in an industry that has the word vision in it? I work in an industry that has the wordology in it. So I thought I'd combine the two, and we call this visionology. At Adobe, we really care about whether or not you know what's coming down the road. Our biggest concern from my team, I work in a team called Adobe Digital Index, and we are completely funded in the business unit and in the marketing department by people who think that it's important that you understand what's coming. And so what I do is I go out and I analyze trillions of website visits, billions of video streams, hundreds of millions of social media mentions. And when I go out and I find out what's going to happen, I prepare some predictions. And so for today, we're going to show you some things that I see coming based on the data. Now, I have to admit, I come from gypsy roots, and my grandma used to teach me how to read Turkish coffee. So if you want to have a little Turkish coffee reading, there's a place called Tuba on Mission. We can do that. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is probably, let's classify this as a Turkish coffee reading. This isn't based on data. This is based on what I think is going to happen. So, you know, I was thinking, I don't really know if it's such a good idea to have this many media industry people all in one spot in San Francisco, kind of too many movers and shakers. So if the ground starts rolling, let's duck and cover. You remember that? Duck and cover? Yeah. But seriously, when we look at this word television, which is a great word, and by the way, this conference, TV of Tomorrow, what an aspirational name, great alliteration, I love it. Unfortunately, that word television, its days are numbered. I have a 7-year-old. Does anyone have young children? Okay. They asked to watch a show. They asked to watch the iPad. They asked to watch things that they know what they're talking about, Fairly Odd Parents, Annoying Orange. Does anyone's kid watch Annoying Orange? Oh my gosh, it truly lives up to its name. Well, we're going to have to rename this industry at some point, and I guarantee you it's not going to be called the premium content industry. But that's what it is, really. That's really what you're doing, and that's what you're so great at, is really delivering that high-quality storytelling, which is the most important thing that we can do going forward. So, that's it for my Turkish coffee prediction. But let's look at some data. TV everywhere. This has gone off the charts with growth. And now, over 1 out of every 5, so over 20% of households in the United States have gone in and authenticated on TV everywhere. It's growing dramatically. It's growing in terms of engagement. It's growing in terms of unique visitors. It's growing in terms of number of video streams. It's growing in part because people have learned how to get authenticated, and they now know how to do it. It's growing because we're now up to, with Adobe Primetime, there's 250 different channels now, so there's a lot more content. There are a lot more devices that can access, and there are previous experiences that now people want to expand. And what is that experience? Well, the biggest one is the iOS app. Just this quarter, for the first time, iOS app access to TV everywhere surpassed browser access. And that's because of the fact that tablets have become so ubiquitous. It's also because of the fact that on the smartphones, we've seen a lot of traction with smartphones recently because of the larger phablet-sized phones as well as the greater connection speeds. So we're starting to see access points expanding in all areas. One of the areas that it's expanding in a lot and very quickly is gaming consoles and OTT devices. Now here's some data. This is actually, the orange line here, this is actually online video, so this is not authenticated. This is the growth of access of online video from OTT and from gaming consoles. However, TV everywhere is growing 6x in this space. So these devices are really enabling that connection. It turns any television into a smart TV. I have been asked what the difference is between the OTT and the gaming devices, and what we see right now is that OTT is rising faster. It's easier to install for people, it's fairly cheap, but also the gaming consoles, some of them are already installed for other purposes. So either way, it's going to be kind of a horse race between these types of devices. I think that the OTT devices are turning out to be easier for the masses to actually put in. I have a Roku device, and I'm pretty terrible at video stuff, I gotta admit. It was easy. So brain dead simple with these new devices is really helping to get the access up. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is the amount of owned media that customers have now. Well, when you think about something like iCloud storage, if you're going to start buying content, buying television shows and keeping them, and I do this a lot for the cartoons, let's face it, because they get watched over and over again. So I definitely buy a lot of these cartoons, and I'm out of iCloud storage. What did I do when I got out of iCloud storage? I went and I bought a media server, which now connects via Wi-Fi to my Roku device so that I can access all of that content on that big screen. That thing that's hanging on my wall, that's a screen. It's not necessarily a TV, it's just a place where I look at stuff really big and pretty. Now, the other thing I see coming is flexible screens. And this is an example, has anyone seen this? This is actually from 2012, and it was on the runway in Paris in 2012. It's a Louis Vuitton digital handbag. This digital handbag has a flexible screen that can be stitched. And it interacts with a mobile app, and it changes the screen. Now, I saw this at a conference actually about 4 months ago, and I was blown away. I thought, oh, holy cow, you mean I can actually change the color to match my outfit and I don't have to put a different purse together? This is awesome. But it's not just that. I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, if you can put a screen on a handbag, you can put a screen anywhere. And if you put a screen anywhere, then what happens to television? What happens to where we look at content? It could be literally anywhere. It could be that tabletop right there. It could be the road. So when we start thinking about what's coming in the future, this notion of the Internet of Things, it's going to impact you much more than you think, more than you can even imagine at this moment, and it's going to be pretty cool. However, there will be some things that are going to be challenging about it. The world is going to probably become what I call beaconized. Do you guys understand what these new beacons are? Yes? No? Okay, let me explain, because I see a lot of no's. Well, there are these sensing devices that are now available to put in locations such as this that will interact with Bluetooth, with your phone, or with other devices. And when you start seeing those rolling out, especially in retail environments, in travel, like hotel environments, and possibly even in your home, think about this future. What if your light switches actually interacted with your fitness band to know that you are walking into a room and turn the light on? That's a beacon. It's actually a device that you put somewhere that's interacting with another device. And when I think about these fitness bands, which was one of the #1 selling Christmas items, I think, wow, that's not just a fitness band, because actually everyone I know, does anyone have a fitness band? Okay, right. Everyone I know who has one, eventually they kind of like get a little bored with it. So when we look at the fitness bands, well, I expect fully that those fitness bands will become much more. They'll have more enabled capabilities, because then you're going to want to keep wearing them. And so people like Fitbit are going to have to come up with new use cases. And when they come up with new use cases, those use cases are probably going to entail interacting with the Internet of Things. And when we interact with the Internet of Things, those devices will essentially become wearable cookies. And they'll identify you, and then we have a lot more interesting data, which we also have a lot more interesting privacy concerns. But be that as it may, maybe we'll rename them MeBit or MeBand. What else is going on? Well, wearables. Video is actually the most common use case for Google Glass. So your television industry is now being viewed on Google Glass. It's small. It's a Newton. I hope you guys remember Newton. I actually have a Newton. I should have brought it with me. But when you start looking at what's happening with Google Glass, it was up in website browser visits 8x. And it was mostly all that video content, and it was mostly sports video content. And can you imagine March Madness in the office with a bunch of people wearing wearables watching the game and no one knows? Can you imagine being in the kitchen doing the dishes, watching the baseball game, and your wife not getting mad because she has no idea? That's what's going on with Google Glass. It's very private viewing. You can only imagine what might go on with that. I'm not going to go there, but at first it's disorienting. Our brains adapt really quickly. There's a study that shows that a person who's never used a Google search or any search engine, it only takes them 5 hours before their brain has rewired after they use a search engine. It changes where you think. You think up here when you're using a search engine. That's where all of your decision is. And so with Google Glass, even though it seems like it's awkward and it seems like it's dorky and it seems like it's disorienting to your brain, you will get used to it. It's going to impact you guys. Probably first because of the use cases of video. So some of this stuff could go wrong. And this is actually my iPhone. And the GBTB receiver, I don't know which one that was. I'm like, I look at this list every time I want to connect with something, and I think, okay, what was that thing called? Most of the Internet of Things is actually interacting on Bluetooth, and Bluetooth is going bonkers. It's not the capabilities in the iPhone and Android to pair with Bluetooth. Does anyone have an old rental car paired on their phone, and they're like, I don't know what this is? Yeah, I do too. Well, I don't anymore, because I actually did try and clean it. But over time, you start getting more and more things paired, and you don't know what they're called. And the reason why I bring this up isn't that it necessarily impacts the television business, but it definitely impacts the trends of how devices and the Internet of Things will become adopted or not become adopted. So if anyone wants to start a technology that helps me with managing my Bluetooth, that would be awesome. Maybe so it tells me the last time I paired, and anything I haven't paired with over 30 days, it automatically disconnects or something like that. That would be great. Maybe a startup idea, although I don't know how it would make any revenue. Okay, so let's get back to video. Sports. Sports, this year is the biggest sports bonanza of all time. What's about to happen this week? World Cup. World Cup is going to be the biggest digital video viewing event in the history of digital video. So we're about on the cusp of the most amazing, huge, worldwide event that we have ever seen. And of course, next year we'll have another one that will be biggest, because that's the way our industry is. So I'll get to say it again and again. It's fantastic. But look at what's happening with video. Sports viewing is that orange line, and sports viewing is the thing that's fueling a lot of people to actually go and connect with TV everywhere. They're using that reason to start their first authentication. They're using that reason to go and get a Roku device or to hook up their gaming console. They're using that reason to begin to be a digital consumer of video. And when they actually move past that, they start to expand their content use. So sports viewing is important, but it's important for two reasons. First of all, because it really is fueling a lot of growth. But second of all, it's important because it establishes a new normal for the customer, for your viewer. They start to get comfortable, and then we build a wedge, and the wedge grows. This is TV Everywhere monthly growth in unique visitors. Look at that 49% growth quarter over quarter. And this doesn't even include a very large sporting event that happened in February. I won't go into too many details, but if I had included that, it would have doubled the unique visitor growth. So I took it out because it was like a spurious result. It was just too much. When we looked at how many streams were going on, in terms of total online video, it was a record. It was the most that we'd ever seen at 35.6 billion. And I bet you by the end of July, we're going to have a new record that's even more than a 50% increase. So everything's growing exponentially. Oh, I have a typo. Oh, sorry. All right, let's talk about one more thing. Social media. Social media is really interesting for a lot of reasons, but one of the things that I've been saying over and over to industry folks like you is use it as a predictive vehicle. We have at Adobe Digital Index been looking at social media mentions by movie titles. And I'm pretty sure we can do this by television show names as well, so long as they're not named something like Frozen, which is too ubiquitous a name to actually track. But when we look at social media, it's a giant water cooler. And when we see what's happening with a profitable movie release and what's happening with an unprofitable movie release, the blue line is going to be unprofitable. The yellow line is going to be profitable. And we can tell 6, 7 weeks prior to a release whether that release is going to be profitable or not. So we put out a summer prediction last week, and we called Edge of Tomorrow not profitable, Fault of Our Stars profitable, and we were right. We've been right every single time. Now, I'm not saying we're not eventually going to be wrong, because, you know, we are in the data business, and sometimes data is misleading. But right now, we can actually tell what's going to happen. What are we measuring here? We're actually measuring the efficacy of the trailers. How well are they pulling people's interest? This is actually sort of an advertising measurement. It makes me wonder, couldn't we do more advertising measurement via social media and look at different lifts and see whether or not we're actually making an impact? Is this an area where we could actually improve the whole breadth of our rating system? Because obviously it's going to be very challenged by Google Glass viewing and OTT viewing and all the different ways that you can actually, if it becomes flexible screens, how's that going to get measured? We had another pivotal moment this month. And at first you might not think that this is going to matter to you, but it really is. Let me explain why. This is browser usage. This is just website visit data, and it's based on 1 trillion visits. We looked at what browser was actually making that visit, and we looked at it over the course of time because we've had this data. Adobe's Marketing Cloud has had the majority of enterprise customers for many, many years, so we can go back in time and look at historical trends. And when we looked at this data back in 2008, it was Internet Explorer was vastly dominant as a browser. Look at what's happened over time. We just had the moment where Google crossed over in the United States with Internet Explorer. It happened in April. And what does that mean? Well, it means that that control of the browsing interface, the technology that that company decides to use, the limitations that they decide to place on you or not, the information that they will send downstream from someone who's using that browser into your analytics or any of your targeting or personalization technology, they have a lot of control over. So there's a couple of companies that are starting to become exceedingly dominant in your world. And I'm not going to say that there's anything you can do about it right now, but it is one of those things that you need to understand and start planning for and start strategizing around. So like I said, data can be fickle. Sometimes I put out a prediction or I talk about what's going on and I'm wrong. And here's a case where I'm wrong. Full transparency. This is tablet use on the red line, and this is smartphone use on the blue line. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's this great moment. And so we put out a press release right here when tablet use surpassed smartphone use. And we said, that's it, the world is now a tablet. Oops. What happened to this line? It totally pancaked. Why did it pancake? Well, technology changed, and the phablet was introduced, the 5-inch plus phone. And that actually started to become good enough for a lot of browsing use cases. Now, I will say that tablets are still very much a very popular use in the applications area. So when we're just looking at browsing right here, that's a little bit of a difference. But still, technology is going to change some of these lines, and in some cases, they really transition them quickly. And that's something that we're all going to look at and make sure that we don't overestimate what our future is. You know, something like the Internet of Things could have this happen if Bluetooth is such a mess, for example. So let me just end with some things that I think I would like to see if there's anyone in this room who has any control over it. First of all, these access points have to be brain dead simple. Just plugging them in, 2 plugs, hopefully that have little color guides on them. That's really necessary because most of us don't know what we're doing. The audio-visual equipment that I've got in my house, all of the Internet of Things that I have, I really don't know how to use them. Make your technology interoperable if you're in the technology business. That applies to us because we're in that business. And we can't have frequent tech failures. We need to fight for our quality. We need to fight for quality over quantity with all of our content. And we all need to become better storytellers. Data is great, but it really doesn't help much to just show a bunch of charts and graphs unless you can explain why it matters and tell the story and be engaging. And so that's what I have to say about the future of things. And I think that overall, you have an opportunity here to be a massive part of this new future, which I think is super exciting. And I hope that in this conference, you can kind of become inspired. And I hope, have I inspired anyone? Yes? Good. Excellent. Have I woken you up? Yay. Yeah. Have I terrified you? Just a tiny bit, maybe? A little bit, a smidge. Yeah. It's a little bit terrifying. But if you want to know what's going on, we post information about, twice a month, different things. We're releasing World Cup social media data findings tomorrow. So with that, please contact me, follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and we'll connect. Thank you so much.